Welcome to Graphing a Hyperbola. So a hyperbola's equation we've seen is very similar to an ellipse. There's a few differences though. So if you have a horizontal hyperbola, that means the x value comes first. If you have a vertical hyperbola, the y value comes first. So it doesn't matter that A or B are bigger or smaller. It just matters is X or is Y first. A and B, you'll notice, stay in the same spots no matter who's bigger or smaller. They always equal 1, and you'll notice the other difference is there's a subtraction sign instead of an addition sign. Okay, so that's the difference in the equations. The other difference is how you find C. The C value is now just like Pythagorean theorem. It is a squared plus b squared. Again, another reminder, A is always the first denominator. It's not who's bigger. It just comes under whoever's first. X first is horizontal, Y first is vertical, A is just always the first denominator. Center is still HK, but be careful on the vertical, it switches spots. So the X value still comes from X, Y value still comes from Y. You'll get tripped up when you see that. So we'll keep practicing. So here's what our hyperbola looks like. It's two parabolas. The way we are gonna graph this is by drawing an imaginary box between the two vertices. So here's an example of a horizontal one and a vertical one. This one's horizontal because the hyperbolas are on the left and the right. This one's vertical because they're on the top and the bottom. Duh. Now we have a few other vocab words. We have something now called the transverse axis. The transverse axis is the axis between the vertices. How do you spell vertices? Probably like this. Okay, so the transverse axis would be here on a vertical one and be up and down. And then you have something called the conjugate axis. The conjugate axis is going to be the other side of our box. So you're not actually going to be able to see this one on a graph because again, our box is imaginary. I'm gonna write other side of the box. I know that's not mathematically sound, but that's what we're doing. So the conjugate axis is the other side of the box. So the conjugate axis on this one will be up and down. It doesn't matter which one's bigger. Transverse axis doesn't have to be the bigger one. Conjugate axis doesn't have to be the bigger one. It just depends on if our hyperbola is vertical or horizontal. You are gonna have one more thing on these hyperbolas that you didn't have on ellipses, and you've seen them. It's the asymptotes. So we're gonna have to write the equation of some asymptotes. Now I have all this information here for you to refer to. You're not gonna be given this, so I don't wanna memorize it. It's way too much. The asymptote equation is point slope, which you've known since algebra 1. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So that's what we're going to use. That's basically what this is. They say plus and minus because there are two asymptotes, and it's plus or minus because one is positive, one's negative. They have the same slope, just one's positive, one's negative. So we only need to write one equation. Let's go ahead and get started. It's easier once you see it being done. So number 1. The first thing I want to notice is that this is horizontal because the x value came first. So I'll make a note of that. Okay, let's figure out A, B, and C. Remember, A comes first, so A is 7. B is 6. To find C, you're doing 7 squared plus 6 squared because remember this is hyperbola, so it's just like Pythagorean theorem. So 7 squared is 49 plus 6 squared is 36. That's 85. Now on your quiz over this, I'm not gonna give you big numbers. I'll give you like 4 and 3, and it'll be square rootable. Like, so 4 squared plus 3 squared is 25, the square root of 25 is 5. You'll get numbers like that because you're not gonna have a calculator on this. But for today, we'll go ahead and tell you that the square root of 85 is 9.2. But again, don't get used to using a calculator because you won't have one on the quiz. Okay, so now that we have A, B, and C, let's go ahead and fill in some stuff that we know. The center, so still comes by parentheses, -2, +1. The transverse axis, since this is horizontal, it comes from under the X. Actually, we'll do this after we graph because we have everything we need to graph. I don't want to confuse you. So first thing I'm going to do is plot the center, -2, 1. And now I'm going to draw this box, so this imaginary box. 7 came from under X, the 49. So I'm going to go left and right 7 and put a little mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, right off the graph, 7. And then 6 came from Y, so I'm going up and down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then using those marks, I'm going to make a dotted line box around my center. Okay, so now that I have my box, I'm going to draw in my asymptotes, so from corner to corner. And now, because this is a horizontal hyperbola, the parabola guys go on the left and the right. So I'm going to go on the same line as my center, put it on this side of the box and this side of the box. So this is where I'm going to draw my little sister parabolas. Oh no, let's go around the work there. Cute. So remember, this is the transverse axis. This is the conjugate axis. So let's write down the length of those. So transverse is 7 plus 7 is 14. Conjugate, 6 plus 6 is 12. The location of my vertices, I've plotted them, so I just need to figure out where they are. That's -9, where are we at? 1, and 5, 1. Now the foci, you do just like ellipse. Since it's horizontal, I'm adding and subtracting it to the X value, and you're adding and subtracting C. So let's subtract first. -2 minus 9.2, -11.2, and -2 plus 9.2 is 7.2. The last thing we need to do is the equation of our asymptotes. So that's where we do the point slope equation. Y minus y1. We get this number from the center, so the y value is 1, equals plus or minus, because there are 2 asymptotes. M is the slope, so we're going to count the slope. So I'm going to go from the center to the corner to count this slope. So up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 6 over 7. That can't be simplified, so that's what I'm writing. And then x minus x1 is -2, minus a -2 is +2. And there's our first hyperbola. Give your neighbor a high five. Okay, let's do some more. Okay, there are 4 more on this page. I'm gonna do the top 2, and then you're gonna do the bottom 2. Who is that? Get out of here. So let's look at this one. First, I'm gonna decide that X comes first, so it is horizontal. A is the first number, so A is 3. B is the second number, so B is 5. To figure out C, 3 squared is 9. Let's do this. 9 plus 25. So we're looking at the square root of 24. And I'll tell you that is 5.8. Again, on any kind of quiz that makes me need to do this, you will have a square rootable number. It'll be like 36 or 16. You know what I'm saying? Okay, the center, there are no numbers added here, so 0, 0. And let's go ahead and graph our hyperbola. So I'm going to plot my center at 0, 0. And now I need to draw my box. So the 3 came from the x, so I'm going to go left and right 3. The 5 came from the y, so I'm going up and down 5. And I'm going to draw my box. A lot of people get confused when they're doing this because this box is vertical, but my ellipse is horizontal. This box has nothing to do with the equation necessarily. This is just an imaginary box that we draw to help us graph. So don't freak yourself out if your box is vertical or horizontal, because this just means where I draw my parabola things. So since it's horizontal, my vertices are going on the left and the right. So the right side of my box and the left side of my box. Draw your asymptotes connecting corner to corner. And then I'll put in my parabolas for my horizontal hyperbola. Okay, now let's finish up these guys. Foci, so that's horizontal. I'm adding and subtracting to the x value, but that's just 0. So if I subtract, it's negative 5.8. If I add, it's 5.8. The vertices we plotted ourselves. Let's just figure out where that is. Negative 3 and 3. Last thing is the asymptotes. That's the y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So y minus, I don't have to write minus 0, so I'm going to put equals. Plus or minus, let's count the slope. Up 5 over 3, that can't be simplified. And then for your x minus x1, that's x minus 0 again, and you don't need that 0. So just x. Yay, we're done with that one. Okay, this one is our first vertical hyperbola. I know it's vertical because y comes first. A is still the first number, so 3. B is still the second number, so that's 2. Let's solve for C. 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4. Square root of 13 is 3.6. Okay, my center. Now this is where I'm going to get messed up. Y'all are going to put 2, 3. 2, 3 is not the center. 3 is the x value, 2 is the y value. Don't let them trick you. Let's go ahead and plot that. 3, 2. And I'm going to draw my box. 3 comes from y, so I'm going to go up and down 3. 2 comes from x, so I'm going to go left and right 2. And finish drawing my little box. Let's throw in our asymptotes. And now I need to figure out where my vertices are. Well, it's vertical, so my vertices are on the top and the bottom of the box, even with the center. And let's answer all of our questions. Foci, I'm adding and subtracting 3.6 since it's vertical to the y value. So 3 minus 3.6 will be negative 1.6. And if I add it, it's 5.6. My vertices, I'm just looking at my graph where they are. 3, 5. And 3, negative 1. y minus y1 is 2. Plus or minus, let's count the slope, up 3 over 2, rise over run, x minus 3. And we're done. You have 2 to practice with. Again, please practice these, do them yourselves before you check your answers on Schoology. Bye-bye.